Before I begin this video, I feel like it's worth discussing that at the time that I was making it, the vice president of Criterion recently came out with a statement claiming that Criterion had been fully absorbed as a Battlefield support studio. Along with this news, EA all but confirmed that the Need for Speed and Burnout franchises have effectively come to an end, which means that both one of my favorite arcade racing franchises and the arcade racing franchise that I started playing over the course of the summer are both effectively dead. I know that information doesn't have a direct effect on the video that I'm about to give to you guys, but it is something that I've had on my mind recently, and it is definitely upsetting. That's all I wanted to say. Let us begin the actual video. I was gonna talk about Burnout 1, but I realized I should probably get more footage for that, and I already said that I would cover this one. Screw it, cue the intro. Burnout 3 Takedown was released by Criterion in 2004 for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Not the GameCube though, which is strange considering that the first two games were released for it. Maybe EA thought that working with Nintendo wouldn't be profitable. For the unaware, Burnout 3 almost didn't happen because Criterion and EA weren't on the best of terms after trying to work on a skateboarding game. Criterion offered to mend the bond by doing a third Burnout game, and EA was more or less like, pretty slim chances that you lot will be able to pull it off, to which Criterion's response was, bet. EA acquired Criterion after Acclaim went bust, and given creative freedom, Criterion would create what is arguably the greatest arcade racer ever conceived. That is not hyperbole, by the way. This game has a 94 on Metacritic with a must-play seal, and at time of writing the script is ranked 82 on Metacritic's best games of all time. More importantly, it is the highest rated arcade racer on that list. The only other racing games ahead of it, Gran Turismo and Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, are simulators. The second best arcade racer, 40 spots behind Takedown in 125th place, is Mario Kart Super Circuit for the GBA. Wipeout XL on the PlayStation 1 at 135th is a more suitable comparison, given it's not a remake of an older racer. And if you want to compare Takedown to something more modern, the highest rated racer that is remotely recent is Forza Horizon 4 at 141st, which is Syncade. I've already made my case before in the retrospective on Revenge that the fourth mainline Burnout was my favorite, and that sentiment hasn't changed. However, that doesn't change the fact that 3 is objectively the best one. In my opinion, it's probably the easiest to pick up and play. Once again, this is going to be more of a retrospective than an actual review. This game is critically acclaimed for a reason. You should play this. PlayStation is also trying to pull out of making physical media, so I would absolutely condone emulation of this 21, soon to be 22-year-old racer. Burnout 3 divides its gameplay modes into World Tour, i.e. the campaign, Quick Race, and Online. Quick Race and Online are pretty self-explanatory, and I haven't fully figured out how to get the online working, so I'm mainly going to be talking about the World Tour mode, again. It doesn't take long to start racing. You pick a region between the US, Europe, and East Asia, you pick an available event, you pick a car, and the madness ensues. Unlike the other games in the franchise I've talked about, this game separates its vehicles into series, of which there are 6. Compact, Muscle, Coupe, Sport, Super, and Special. The handling of vehicles between series differs, and the top speed of vehicles also increases with each class. Although between cars in a series, rarely did I feel a difference in handling with a few exceptions. It also highlights one of my pet peeves with this game, which is the lackluster customization in comparison to Revenge and even the prior entries. Minor nitpick, I know, but most of the car colors are between red, blue, and black or white, with a few exceptions that might have yellow replace blue. The closest thing you're getting to customization is using the alternate vehicles in a series which have liveries on them. Anyway, the actual driving part of this game is extremely good. I've described the vehicles in Revenge as hefty, and Point of Impact's vehicles had weight but were maneuverable. Takedown's handling doesn't quite match those, as it's rather agile. Vehicles drift smoothly, far better than in the previous entries, and they feel light to control. Dodging traffic often comes down to reaction speed and not micro-adjusting yourself into a bus or a wall. The first time I played this game, I was actually thrown off by the controls, because this is from an era where triggers weren't used for pedals on PlayStation, cross and square are used for acceleration and braking, and R1 is used for boost. I'm pretty sure Xbox still uses the standard triggers since the boost button there is A. This game also marks a change to how the boost system works, which may sound familiar if you've seen my video on Revenge. Boost can be used whenever you wish instead of having to wait on a full meter, though the burnout mechanic where your meter tops out if you use all of it in one go is absent. Tailgain, i.e. drafting, and trading paint with other racers now grant boost as well. And most importantly, 3 introduced the ability to take down the other racers as a mechanic. Every takedown multiplies the boost meter's base amount up to a maximum of 4, as well as maxing out the gauge. Crashing or getting taken out reduces the meter. When your car crashes, not if, when, holding the boost button puts you in impact time, which is basically slow-mo that lets you control your wrecked vehicle via aftertouch. If your wreck comes into contact with a racer that hasn't crashed yet, it's an aftertouch takedown, which negates the meter loss from crashing and will add to your boost the same way a normal takedown does. In comparison to the future entries, takedowns and takedown feel considerably easier to get. In Revenge, Dominator, and Paradise, takedowns from the side tend to require more precision and positioning, typically close to a wall so your impact has enough force to swerve them against it. It is not uncommon in 3 to sideswipe someone and then see their crash cam about a second later. There's also the psych outs where adversaries end up crashing without necessarily being in contact with the player, something which I mistakenly thought was removed in Revenge. Furthermore, the rubber banding in these games actually works to 3's benefit. It's not exactly fun to have a car shoot past you out of nowhere, and there are circumstances in this game where it's more of a hindrance than an enhancer, which I will get to, but the benefit to other racers being close to you is that you're constantly getting new targets to inflict some road rage on. You're incentivized to go for takedowns too. The other methods of filling the boost bar are relatively slow, while taking out a racer fills and multiplies the meter. Plus, it's satisfying to screw the game over while the opponents try to kill you. Don't expect the AI to be pushovers. They may be easier to take down, but they are just as aggressive. The game even has a little aggression meter in the form of the color of the position marker over the cars, and taking out a racer practically guarantees they're going to try to punch you into a highway splitter. After having played Burnout 1 and Point of Impact, I've only gotten more appreciation for the adept abilities of Criterion with the renderware engine by this point. The crashes in Burnout 2 were already capable of being wicked, but 3 cranked the dial up so far it's blown the engine. We went from broken windows and fender benders to tornado spins, pop tires, and disjointed hoods, to bending and breaking the cars like ragdolls with sparks everywhere and excellent sound design. This is why people love Burnout, because you can fuck up a turn and watch your car get Fusro Dodd like the track is the Dragonborn. And may I remind you, this game is 21 years old! Progression in this game is much more streamlined than in Revenge. You go for medals in the various events presented to you, and completing races will unlock more events, as well as new cars as you earn burnout points or if you're able to obtain gold in certain events. When it comes to the game's event types, I have a surprising amount to talk about, despite the fact that there are less of them, and they have the same category split as they will in Revenge: Crash and Race. Like with Revenge, doing crash events unlocks more crash events, and doing races unlocks more races. I'm going to discuss the race events first this time since there's not as much to repeat, and it actually highlights a few minor hiccups I have in regards to this game. The 6 race types are Race, Grand Prix, Preview, Elimination, Face-Off, and Road Rage. Race, Preview, and Grand Prix are pretty much the same as they go on to be in Revenge, although the Grand Prix actually rewards you properly this time. Road Rage is actually a little different in its debut here in comparison to Revenge, as you're given a standard time limit rather than the event starting with a low timer that increases every few takedowns. Aside from that, the rules aren't changed. Wreck as many opponents as possible before you total your car or run out of time. It's the remaining 2 race events where I have to stop being nice. Elimination races are inferior to the Eliminator events in Revenge. Firstly, because the racers aren't eliminated by a fixed timer, but rather once all cars that have last place have crossed the line. What this means in practice is that these events can be frustratingly long, and in the event the AI rubber bands so far ahead that you don't know where they are, there will be no way to gauge how screwed you are until your car spontaneously wrecks. Elimination races are at their best when you have the tension of a ticking clock over your head. Leaving it up to laps just makes these endurance races where the pack thins every lap. And then there's face-offs. Jesus Christ, these events are atrocious. Returning from the first 2 Burnout games, face-offs are duels which reward you with your opponent's car if you win. In theory, these events shouldn't be that hard. In execution, good fucking luck. The problem with face-offs here is that they go against the game's design. Burnout 3 is at its best when you're battling multiple racers at once and chaining takedowns to get all the boosts. With the racer population reduced to a third, there's less opportunities for takedowns, so it takes longer to get to max speed. and because of the rubber banding, it becomes damn near impossible to shake the other racer off your tail. Meanwhile, a single mistake will effectively end your entire race. The AI will get too far ahead to catch up, and without opponents to take down, you'll be stuck in the mud with the default boost gauge, and no efficient ways to raise it. The amount of times I've had a race ruined because of an unlucky car crash near the end is far too many. This event type has always been the worst in these games in my opinion, but at least the cars you can unlock from them in Burnout 1 and 2 are interesting. 3 just gives you Dominator versions with flame vinyls, which honestly look worse than some of the other cars you can obtain. Furthermore, because the way the boost system works in the previous entries, one could actually get the full value of the boost if they kept up the dangerous driving, or completed a perfect lap, which would fill it instantly. While you do get boost from perfect laps and Takedown, it only adds a multiplier, which is not the maximum for the bar unless you're already at 3x somehow. Hello, Editing Orange here. I would like to point out something that I actually missed when I was doing the initial recording of this video, which is the fact that all of the face-offs are fucking point-to-point, so you can't even get a perfect lap benefit because there are no laps. I hate this goddamn event type. I am happy these got dropped in Revenge like they fucking deserve to be. Gripes aside, that does it for the race events in game, meaning I can talk about the game's crash events. The objective of crash mode remains the same as it does in every entry that follows Burnout 2. Cause the most expensive crash possible by driving and wrecking your vehicle into traffic. The addition of impact time and aftertouch allows some level of control after the initial crash, or once you send a car over a ramp. Unlike in Revenge, the car is effectively in a crash state after it takes a jump, instead of being possible to drive once its wheels are flat on the ground. There's no external wind to alter the air trajectory either, or a fast start mechanic, or the ability to choose a car for the event outside of Quick Race. Takedown also introduced the Crash Breaker, which I explained in my Revenge retrospective, allowing you to blow up your car at the push of a button after enough cars have been wrecked in the crash. Unlike Revenge, you don't have to mash the boost button to detonate the car early, and the Crash Breaker doesn't trigger on an automatic timer either. Here, it's just the push of a button, and you can hit it any time after it becomes available, although you only get one compared to Revenge's percentage gauge, making it possible to get 2. What makes this edition of Crash Mode interesting compared to the rest of the franchise is the addition of scoreable tokens. There are tokens which instantly trigger your car's boost so that it travels at full speed, 3 tiers of cash tokens which add to your final score, Crash Breaker tokens which, you guessed it, trigger an explosion when you touch them, and most importantly, the Multiplier and Heartbreaker tokens. The 2x and 4x multipliers do what you expect, multiplying your total score after all other scoring tokens have been accounted for. 4 times supersedes the 2 times, so there's no octupling your score. The Heartbreaker does the opposite and slashes your score instead, dividing it in half, as well as voiding all multipliers you might have gotten. Thus, they're the one token you want to avoid. As expected, crash events are a lot of fun in this game, though as I'm sure most of you know by now, I play these games for the races and road rage more than the crash mode. Still, that doesn't change the fact that Burnout 3 is a better game for its inclusion and innovations. Having aired out my only real grievances with this game in the previous section, the last thing I want to talk about is the presentation. This is yet another game from the Y2K era where racing games actually had really cool UI. Although, oddly enough, this game's UI reminded me of Wii Sports of all things. Hear me out for a second. The aesthetic of Wii Sports is designed in a way to evoke the feeling that you're tuning into a news broadcast. From the blue and white monochrome theme, to the music sounding like some form of breaking news theme, to the literal spinning globe in the background with the game's title swirling around it. And right in front of that wireframe globe is a screen which flickers with static as it shows a still over whatever option you have selected. In the case of the sports, it's like a host is about to tune in live to that location for whatever sports event is taking place. Burnout 3, while laid out a bit more conventionally, also seems to share this news channel aesthetic. The colors are darker in tone compared to Wii Sports, but it's still using a monochrome blue palette, with the exception of red for the game's logo. The shapes and borders layer atop one another in comparison to Wii Sports, and there's a constant gridlock wireframe look to the menus, which adds a technological spin to the presentation. The wireframe globe also makes an appearance in the game, most prominently in the region select for the World Tour. All of this is being presented through CrashNav, which itself feels like the name of a news widget. The footage used from the intro also adds a lot to the idea that we're tuning into some sort of news segment. Then there's the little traffic cam views that we get when viewing crash event sites on the map. Oh, and also there's a map sliding nicely with the news aesthetic. The car selection screen is also quite nice, flickering with static as you switch between vehicles, which only strengthens the television angle. The in-event UI is no such either, though it is more subdued a majority of the time. I'd say the main color highlighted here is yellow. You can see in the game's score targets, the pop-up notifications that come up with the actions you undertake in the event, the speedometer, and especially the flaming boost bar as it fills more and more. Blue still has a presence in the accenting colors for borders, but you'll mainly see it take prominence when a takedown happens, be it yours or another racer's. The borders slide in as the wrecked vehicle tumbles and cracks, then returns to the action. In the case it's the player crashing, the borders are thick black instead of blue, as though one were watching a widescreen film scene. Another bar on the bottom row scores the crash as though it were some extreme sports game, in the vein of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And then the action resumes with the game giving a cheeky comment reflecting on the cause of the crash. Honestly, this game's aesthetic is extremely arcadey, like arcadey in a similar way that the first two games were arcadey. Or maybe the correct term here would be gamey? Like, it feels like the aesthetic for a video game, as it should. I'd be remiss not to discuss the game's sound design, which is also damn near perfect. The clips when sifting through menus feel satisfying. During the actual races, the whine of the engine and the rumbling nitros add to the feeling of power behind the cars, as does the sound of the cars changing gears. I don't think I've ever heard gear changes sound so satisfying outside of the Burnout franchise. My favorite sounds in the game would have to come from the little UI flourishes and the crashes. For the UI, the little sweeps, bells, and whistles from hitting score targets or pulling off skills for boosts gives the in-race UI a lot of energy. And with the crashes, the sharp skids of metal and cracking glass echo through the ears of players. If impact time is active, it's stretched out with a horror sound font that is beyond daunting, as though you were watching a slasher toss aside a corpse in their wake, which in this case is your car. The final piece of this game's presentation, in my opinion, is the soundtrack. Given this was a part of the era where games had extremely good licensed soundtracks, Burnout 3 has an excellent selection. Part of why I started adding Burnout tracks to my miscellaneous playlist was the selection of tracks in Takedown. I mentioned during the Revenge retrospective that the sound of this game is almost entirely composed of punk and rock. The only exception to this rule would be the game's main theme, which you only hear in the menu when you're selecting a file, in which case it sounds a lot more like something resembling techno. Of course, none of this is to discount the soundtrack. The music is really good and entertaining to listen to, and in general, I was quicker to a warm reception with this game's OST compared to Revenge's. Lazy Generation is an iconic opening song for the game, and while it's not my favorite, it's still pretty good. Independence Day by No Motive was the first song to really get stuck in my head with that earworm of a chorus. This Fire by Franz Ferdinand was the main track to jump out at me, thanks to being in the Retrospective video that got me to start diving into these older games. And it's also quite energetic to listen to. Audio Blood, Over the Counter Culture, Radio Up, 416, Right Side of the Bed, Breathing, Just Tonight, My Favorite Accident, A Populist for Two, Come On, Fall Apart. All of these are great and fit the game's vibe. I don't love every track on the setlist, but there's a lot I do like. Give It Up by Midtown was probably the song I was least expecting to become my second favorite, but the race from that first video I posted on Takedown featured that song, and it hit at the perfect time for the race's pace. The conclusion was also just perfectly timed. As for my favorite track in the game, well, you heard it at the start of the video. Broken Promises by Moments in Grace. God, how do I even begin to explain my love for this track? It pretty much has me from the first riff. The backing ambiance and vocals feel haunting in the best way. The chorus and the key change are stuck in my head, and that final chorus is a damn masterpiece in regards to how it builds. This is my favorite song in all of Burnout. I'd gush about my favorite moments from most of the soundtrack, but I don't want this video to become a music analysis. And I have to start wrapping up my closing thoughts anyway. I hope I've gotten my point across about how much fun it is to play this game. Yes, I have my sticking points with it. Lack of customization for the cars, face-off and elimination races sucking total bong, a lack of a replay feature, the online specifically refusing to connect me to people with my MacBook Air, and the rubber banding occasionally deciding it wants to shunt me in the nuts. But it's pretty negligible in hindsight. This game is extremely easy to just hop in and start messing around. Usually I hop in this game just to do road rages and see how far I can get. Sending cars into the next plane of existence, spinning them like a top, or making them crack and smash against the pavement like a spike controller is a dopamine hit that has failed to get old across the nearly 60 collective hours I've spent with this franchise. And until somebody is able to capture this game's lightning strike again, I'm more than happy to continue enjoying this diamond I never got to admire until this summer. With that being said, I have two places left to give my attention to, one being an exclusive that seems to slip through the cracks, and the other being the franchise's roots. Unfortunately, I don't know how long it'll be before I get around to that, as I've caught the PS2 racing craze thanks to Criterion's efforts. So, I might end up covering something else pretty soon. God, first Rec Room, then Danganronpa, now this? How many times is my dumb little channel gonna switch trajectories? It's not even the main one I use anymore. Ah well, covering racing games might be a good use of my spare time. This has been Owl rambling about legalized vehicular combat. Thank you and have a good day.